After winning his second Super Bowl in only 5 years with the Chiefs, it's safe to say that Patrick Mahomes solidified himself as one of the greats. So I think the question now is, what would it take for him to become the GOAT?
It's for real. Mahomes up in the air.
Out of Texas Tech, Patrick was a decently high-rated prospect going into the draft, with many figuring that he would go either in the first or second round considering that he was a beast at Tech, but didn't have all that much success in terms of winning. Nonetheless, when you put up over 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, people will notice, and I guess some of those people were in Kansas City.
The Kansas City Chiefs select Patrick Mahomes, the second quarterback.
Even though he put up insane stats with the Red Raiders, the fact that Mahomes went 10th off the board was a bit wild, because he wasn't the guy we've come to know at that point. All of that took quite a bit of time, so considering that Alex Smith was playing pretty well as a starter in KC, it wasn't much of a surprise that Patrick needed some adjusting to get used to the next level.
The Chiefs are trading quarterback Alex Smith.
Well, it turns out it didn't take that long, as the Chiefs decided to trade Alex to Washington going into the 2018 season, which would seem insane considering the fact that Patrick didn't have a single touchdown yet, but hey, it worked out pretty well.
He's in trouble. Now gets it away. Are you kidding me?
The Mahomes may have been great at Texas Tech, but somehow he was even better in Kansas City as he was able to put up over 5,050 touchdowns through the year as practically a rookie. Those are what we like to call not just MVP, but legendary stats. And so it wasn't a surprise that Patrick went from an afterthought to one of the most talked about players in football seemingly overnight.
2018 AP Most Valuable Player is Patrick Mahomes!
After putting together an MVP season in his first actual year, Patrick established himself as a stud muffin. But even more so than that, he was able to lead Kansas to a #1 seed, and after beating Indy, a conference title game against Brady and the Patriots at Arrowhead. Quite a spot to be in for Mahomes, but he was able to live up to it and more, as his nearly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns brought the game to overtime. But sadly enough, luck wasn't on his side. If things had gone differently, maybe Mahomes would have won a Super Bowl that season, but barely losing to the GOAT in the conference championship is still pretty dang good, and had many thinking that Patrick could be the next one in line.
Flushed out again, all the way back. Turning the corner, fires downfield, caught!
Going into 2019, like I said, the hype was real, and although Mahomes didn't put up 5,000 once again, his 4,000 in only 14 games was proof enough that he was here to stay, and this time around, I'm sure he was looking to make it all the way. For most, it would be wishful thinking at best, but for someone as talented as Patrick, he was able to back it up with dominant play game after game as he led KC to a matchup against the on-fire San Francisco 49ers. Up until midway through the fourth, it seemed like the Chiefs were going to come up short once again, but Mahomes was not going to go out without a fight, as he and the rest of KC came back firing and somehow ended up on top.
Mahomes throws, pass, caught, Williams, touchdown! Chiefs are Super Bowl champions!
Winning a Super Bowl in your second full season is what we like to call GOAT stuff, and once again proved that Patrick was not just great, but special, and yet it was only the beginning. After winning an MVP and then a Super Bowl in back-to-back years, all eyes were on what Mahomes would do in 2020, and although it would typically be difficult to follow up 2 historic seasons, this is the Mahomes we're talking about, so you know exactly what went down.
Mahomes throws it for the touchdown!
In only 15 games, Patrick put up nearly 4,800 and 38 touchdowns, and upon that led Kansas City to a dominant 14-2 season as they were given yet another shot at a Super Bowl against good old Brady and the Bucs in Tampa. Once again, it was Mahomes versus Brady, but this time it was on the biggest stage in football. So although you would think it would be an absolute nail-biter, Kansas City could never get off the ground, as Patty tried his very best, but it was not enough as Brady won yet another Super Bowl. Even though he came up short, Mahomes did pretty much everything once again. Now it was just on him to keep the good times rolling, as he and the rest of the Chiefs had quickly become one of the very best teams in football, and what many consider to be the next dynasty after New England. It seemed like no matter what he did or how well he played, Patrick always found a way to be compared to Brady, so I guess it was a sign that he was doing something right. Going into 2021, like always, Mahomes dominated through the air with over 4,800 yards and 30 touchdowns, as he led Kansas City to this time a 12-5 record, and as you could guess, another playoff appearance, as they were looking to do their thing once again.
Mahomes escapes.
I really wish I didn't see that.
After destroying Pittsburgh, Patty and the Chiefs battled against Josh and the Bills in what was one of the best games in NFL history. A game that was so good that it went into overtime. But this time around, the luck was on Mahomes' side.
Looking to the end zone for the win!
Kansas City beat Buffalo the same way that New England did to them only a few years ago, as Mahomes was now going up against good old Joe Shiesty in yet another AFC championship. Considering that the Chiefs had been in 4 straight championship games and were at home, it seemed like their game to lose. But although they were up 21-3 nearing the end of the half, the Bengals roared back behind some stellar play by Joe Cool as they took down KC in a heartbreaking fashion. Back-to-back years, the Chiefs made it close, but not close enough as they weren't able to replicate their success back in 2020. And it seemed like it was only going to get more difficult after this.
Tyreek Hill has been traded from Kansas City to Miami.
Although they still had the best tight end in football, losing Tyreek seemed like a recipe for an underwhelming season by KC. But come on, this is Mahomes we're talking about, so you know exactly what happened.
This time they send an extra man. Mahomes gets away to the end zone. Caught! Watson!
Sorry to stop the video, but since you're here, it'd be awesome if you could subscribe, like, turn on post notifications, and comment down below if you think Patrick Mahomes will be the GOAT. But anyways, back to the video. Without one of the best receivers in the league, you would think that Patty would at least have a little dip in production. But my man is just built different, as he put up a career best 5,200 yards passing and 41 touchdowns through the air.
It's 3rd and 7. Titans bring the heat. Mahomes downfield for Watson. Oh, what a play!
Numbers like that without Tyreek is what we like to call GOAT level stuff. So after putting up those kinds of stats, it wasn't much of a surprise that Mahomes not only led the Chiefs to a 14-3 season, but also got some more hardware.
Patrick Mahomes.
Let's continue to go for that dream this weekend.
It should be surprising that he does all this stuff, and it should be insane that Mahomes was able to dominate without one of the best players in the league. But when you're the very best, you operate at a very high standard, and it's why the Chiefs beating Jacksonville seemed like light work, as Patrick did his thing once again, and KC once again matched up against Joe Burrow and the Bengals in their 5th straight conference title game. This time around, there was a lot more back and forth between both teams going into the matchup, with the mayor of Cincinnati going so far to do this.
Whereas Joseph Lee Burrow has been asked by officials to take a paternity test confirming whether or not he's his father.
Oh boy.
You expect guys like Eli Apple to talk some trash, but when mayors get involved, you know it's serious. So there was a lot of hype to see whether or not Joe or Patrick was going to end out on top. From beginning to end, both sides went back and forth, and although Mahomes was dealing with a messed up ankle from the game against Jacksonville, he powered through it, and along with the help of a little push in the back, earned Kansas City a ticket back to the big game.
Whatever I could to win, and obviously there was times where you could see that it wouldn't let me do it.
From 45 yards. All the way, it's good.
Somehow without Tyreek, with a bunch of injuries and a messed up ankle, Patrick led the Chiefs to their 3rd Super Bowl appearance in only 4 years, against this time the super dominant Jalen Hurts-led Eagles in the desert. Going into the game, the matchup seemed about as even as it gets, with both sides full of talent from top to bottom, and really the only edge that Kansas City had was experience, which they needed every bit of in what was an absolute dogfight from beginning to end.
In that way, throwing that way, Kelsey got it, touchdown!
It's a big man, Jordan Davis, pulling him down.
Usually Super Bowls are low scoring, and usually one side is able to take the lead and run with it at the end. But even though Patrick played well, so did Jalen. But when the game mattered most, Mahomes proved why he was there time and time again before, as he solidified himself as one of the greatest to ever do it.
Mahomes in trouble. Bad ankle at all! Butker up, got it!
Even with all the odds stacked against him, even with an absolutely destroyed ankle, and even though he had to take his game to another level to beat Philly, Patrick did it, and it's why all 5 of you are watching this video in the first place. Winning 1 Super Bowl or 1 MVP is cool, but 2 of each elevates you to a different level, especially when you do it in only 5 seasons. To be honest, accolades like that so early on is something that puts Mahomes among the likes of only someone like Brady, who may have gotten 1 more Super Bowl by that time, but hadn't got an MVP yet. It took Joe Montana a decade to get his first MVP, and although he had 2 Super Bowls in his first 5 years, then again, he also had this guy. All this in mind, considering that Mahomes is already in legendary company this early on, what would it take for him to be considered the GOAT? Damn, it took me 10 minutes to get to the point of the video. Sorry, so let's just get into this. At this point, Mahomes has 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowls, and arguably been the best quarterback in football for 5 years straight. So how much more would it take for him to be seen as the best? If we're being honest, Patrick's only competition is good old Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. Crazy how both have Patrick in their name. But anyways, he's really the only guy who could outpace the homie. Don't get me wrong, guys like Montana, Marino, and Manning are all great, but they never did what Patrick just did. And honestly, I don't even think Brady's done anything quite like it. He's just been great for so long. Nonetheless, it's going to be pretty tough for Mahomes to win 7 Super Bowls considering just how competitive the AFC is. So if he ended his career with 5 wins and maybe 4 or 5 MVPs, would it be enough for him to be the GOAT? It's an interesting thought, and it's pretty similar to what's currently happening with LeBron and Jordan, because you got one guy who's put up record after record, while on the other side, Jordan has just been out of this world, but played less time. No matter what side of the argument you fall under, both have valid points, and honestly, I don't even know who I would consider as the number 1, which I think could be a similar situation to what happens with Mahomes in a decade or so.
From the pocket, on the run, to the end zone, it's caught!
As long as Patty remains healthy and keeps winning big games, he'll easily make his way to the top of the NFL record books. But will he ever truly be considered the GOAT if he doesn't win 7 of his own? Honestly, I think yes. I'm not even a Chiefs fan, but after witnessing what Mahomes did this season, I'm convinced that he's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen. And so I'm sure he'll be back in the same spot numerous times. Cause trust me, as long as he plays like he just did, there will be a whole lot of winning. If Patrick ended his career with like 5 or 6 Super Bowls, but every single passing record, I think I'd call him the GOAT, which at this point is not all that crazy a thought. It's really just down to whether or not he can maintain this level of play, and upon that Kansas City can keep a solid unit around him. You just know that the Chiefs will always be in the mix with a coach like Andy Reid and players like Kelsey Mahomes, so I can only imagine that they will demolish the record books year after year. And after it's all said and done, I think Mahomes could very well become the greatest of all time as long as he's on that football field. But anyways, what do you guys think? Is Brady untouchable, or does Mahomes have what it takes to become the next GOAT? Comment down below your thoughts. Patrick Mahomes is one of the most exciting players in NFL history, and after winning yet another MVP and yet another Super Bowl, I think he has what it takes to be the very best before you know it.
I just want to let y'all know that this is just the beginning. We ain't done yet. So I'll make sure to hit y'all back next year, and I hope the crowd's the same. Appreciate y'all. Let's go, baby.
Thanks for watching the video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to subscribe, like, turn on post notifications, and comment down below stuff you want next. But anyways, see you all soon, and peace out.
Hey, I got some wise words for that Cincinnati mayor. Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni.